Excellent, well, we're ready, yeah.
Go to Cloud.
Yep.
Good. Good evening, everyone. Call the meeting to order. I have a motion moved by member Floyd and seconded by member Paquette. Let this meeting be open at 6 o'clock. All in favor? That's carried. Adoption of the agenda moved by member Paquette, seconded by member Langlois, that the agenda presented to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting, the Planning Advisory Committee dated the 7th of January 2025 be adopted as presented and prepared and amended. All in favor? That's good. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have the adoption of previous minutes moved by member Foisey, seconded by member Paquette, that the minutes of the Special Planning Advisory Committee meeting of the 10th of December 2024 be adopted as circulated. All in favor? That's carried. There are no presentations and delegations this evening, so I just have to silence my phone. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
number 2, we had referred, so we make a note that we amended that.
Number 2 in the
The planning recommends to cancel the draft zoning bylaw as amended for council consideration. Because we didn't,
uh
I think we deferred that as opposed to the carry, so we can change that
so as amended.
as amended.
That's all. I also said, I think as amended in the, so perfect. Consent applications, there are none for this evening. So we will move into the business of the tonight. And I will start just by kind of recapping for our audience of hens that we continue to do our work on a zoning bylaw amendment to try and do some work that council has asked the Planning Advisory Committee to do. So first, of course, Happy New Year to everybody. And I will take the opportunity to maybe summarize the process so far and outline the proposed next steps so that we're all on the same page and everybody who's following along knows exactly kind of where we're at in the process. So I'll ask for a bit of indulgence. So perhaps the first question folks might be asking at home is why the township proposing these zoning amendments now. So as we all know, the province of Ontario has made several legislative changes in recent years and months, including amendments to the Ontario Planning Act and the passing of a new provincial planning statement on October 20th, 2024. Its primary intentions were to make it easier to build new affordable and attainable housing solutions and tenants to access them. Best practice planning principles generally direct new forms of housing development towards existing settlements, so hamlets in our case, while discouraging cluster and ribbon development where possible. That said, Bonfield is predominantly a rural community within which new housing are permitted in locations beyond hamlets, primarily where such uses can contribute to the productive and non-destructive use of land, while supporting the enhancing activities that align with strategic direction of council. In all instances, planning decisions are required to ensure compliance with the applicable laws, including but not limited to the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, the Building Code, the Fire Prevention Act, and the Conservation Authorities Act, just to name a few. The current comprehensive zoning bylaw 2012-49 came into effect on the 28th of August 2012, over 12 years ago. And since that time, staff have noted several trends and changes which are proposed amendment to the comprehensive zoning bylaw that the proposed amendment to the comprehensive zoning bylaw seeks to address, such matters outlined in the report presented to council by the Township CAO Clerk Treasurer on the 24th of September 2024. Council approved the proposal by staff to produce an amendment to the existing comprehensive bylaw with a focus in 4 areas. Following a very exhaustive process, which includes many meetings by the PAC committee members. So thank you to this committee for the immense amount of heavy lifting that you've done on behalf of the municipality and our taxpayers. Exhaustive reviews of planning documents and applicable laws, and the Bonfield staff consulting with experts, planning consultants, and senior managers of the North Ottawa Conservation Authority, we're in a place for this committee to make recommendations to council. For those that are interested in the detailed process that is unfolded, the committee has been provided a summary of all of the activity to date, which was very detailed and well done. And I'm going to ask the staff to post that on the website for those that would be interested to know all of the great work that the committee has done to date. So there are, as I mentioned above, the 4 key areas. So first being hunt camps. So just to summarize at a very high level, hunt camps are currently not permitted within the township. So the proposed amendment is to allow hunt camps within the municipality. And it's just trying to figure out potentially what size they can be, what lot size they need to be on, and creating the rules around them. But really wanting to make sure that we've taken our municipality from a municipality who has not permitted hunt camps to date to a municipality that does. Shipping containers is the next. As we all know, shipping containers are not currently permitted in any of the zones within the township. So the proposal is to explore the opportunity to permit shipping containers for storage purposes within the various zones in the municipality, based on, again, a set of rules of setbacks and some criteria that the committee is looking to define. We have accessory structures, so currently allowed with specific provisions in different zones. The proposed changes will continue to permit storage sheds to be constructed for the storage of materials and tools. Where the construction of a new principal dwelling is proposed, an accessory building can be constructed simultaneously, subject to an agreement with the township. In all instances, human habitation will not be permitted within accessory structures, as they are unable to and not permitted for human occupancy purposes. Excuse me. And then the last is the additional dwelling units. So additional dwelling units are not currently permitted in any zones throughout the township. We are working to propose that they are permitted within specific zones within the municipality. The residential limited services, multi-attached zones, commercial zones and industrial zones, or other zones subject to environmental protection, open space and hazards are, to name a few, which would be potential exceptions. Any zone location where specific outflow would be within 300 meters of an at-capacity lake is another consideration that we have been considering. The committee is struggling with additional dwelling units authorized by the residential limited services zones. So what we know through this process is that the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority is responsible for protecting and conserving water bodies within the North Bay Mattawa watershed through regulations and Conservation Authorities Act, which is applicable law for planning and building purposes. The very nature of the planning system requires taking a long-term view so that the needs and expectations of its residents may effectively be balanced with broader public, social, economic, and environmental considerations. So given the feedback received from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, staff is proposing that new secondary dwelling units shall no longer be permitted within RLS zones, and that additional dwelling units, whether attached or detached, will also not be permitted within the RLS zones. North of Highway 11 and in all other locations where a specific septic outflow would be within 300 meters of an at-capacity lake. Owners of a few vacant remaining undeveloped residential lots within the residential limited service zones north of Highway 17 may still be able to develop their properties on a case-by-case basis, subject to the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority approval regarding the proposed design and location of the specific septic systems. So what comes next? So just so everyone's clear what our process is. So tonight, we're asking the PAC committee to approve in principle a proposed amendment to the comprehensive zoning bylaw. So it may proceed to council for further review and discussion. That's what is on the table for discussion tonight. If council resolves to approve as is, or perhaps chooses to amend the draft amendment to the bylaw, public consultation will be launched at the end of January 2025 to gain the public's feedback on the proposed changes. The public meeting will then be scheduled to take place on or around the 28th of February 2025, during which time the public will be provided a further opportunity to understand the changes and engage with experts and provide comments on the proposed draft. And following that public meeting, responses will be consolidated and any approved and or necessary changes introduced within the proposed amendment to the comprehensive zoning bylaw will be made for council's consideration. So that is a bit of a summary as to kind of where we're at today. Obviously, I think, again, my hats off to the committee for lots of heavy lifting. I know we talked about, it's 4 items that we're really discussing. Lots of conversation on them all, and hopefully we can put all of our cards on the table tonight, have a conversation about the additional dwelling units, because I believe that's the only one that we are not yet settled on. And hopefully get to the point where we can call a vote and move this forward to committee. So with that, I don't know if Simon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, you covered it well. No, I'm good for now. I'll happily answer any more questions that come from the committee.
Okay. So formality is, I mean, we need to call for the conversation. So obviously the conversation needs to be around our RLS zones when it comes to additional dwelling units. So we have received a number of reports from that the Conservation Authority has authored about Talon Lake, about where they draw their authority from in the acts, which I mentioned within the preamble. So I will open up for conversation to see if we can get this to move forward and come to a conclusion on it. So that's kind of where we're at. So
I can start.
sure, please do.
Okay, my concern is when I'm reading those emails, and we still unfortunately don't have anybody here from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Area. And in speaking with them, depending on who you spoke with, there's different opinions in regards to dwelling units. And we're talking about that the lake areas north of Highway 17 are already at land use capacity, but the lake areas of Highway 17 includes multiple municipal organizations. North Bay, East Ferris, Bonfield, Calvin, etc. There is no reference to what those communities are doing in this regard. Has North Bay Mattawa or the township met or spoke with these municipalities on how they will be proposing their bylaws regarding ADUs, secondary dwellings on waterfront properties? Have all of these stakeholders met with North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority to come up with an actual policy, regulation, directive, since this statement applies to all of them? I would think that the North Bay Mattawa would want to have an official documentation, a policy, bylaw, directive. I have not seen that, and I have not seen that in evidence of any of the documents supplied. In order to defend any person challenging this bylaw and for responses to inquiries from provincial government due to the province's agenda for more homes and to have consistency for other municipalities affected. Also, for the public to understand in the RLS areas that should an additional dwelling secondary residence no longer apply as a permitted use, even though its current septic, etc., may comply or be able to meet the requirements for a separate unit and or additional septic and or protective measures will no longer be available as even an option in this zone, even with amendments to make more restrictive. As an example, the aging parents will be unable to live in a separate unit or their children are waiting to be able to afford housing if the property is located in our RLS zone. But nothing prohibits the number of persons living in the same building. This will also not allow the township to support any range of housing opportunity within the RLS zones and disqualifies this zone from 2.23 of the proposed OP. I was not aware, or I didn't notice before, that additional dwelling was not being permitted in the OP presented to an MMEH, as in a previous draft copy I had. It was permitted in all land used designations with permitted single detached dwellings. The OP presented to MMEH states under section 3.14.2 states additional residential units will not be permitted for properties with waterfront. No zone stipulated, and secondary dwellings has also been removed. So technically, this can take in further waterfront properties outside of the RLS zone. And so I'm kind of stating that why would North Bay Mattawa Conservation not support receiving an application on additional dwelling or a dwelling within an existing unit, or go through the same qualifying application case by case process as any other zone? If no actual legal formal documentation exists that says North Bay MCA won't, there are so many different scenarios to consider before making a blanket statement that no ADU secondary dwelling will be permitted in our RLS zone. I think in the table of comparison, there was no ACU provisions, but in fact there are. I think we acknowledge that because we were able to have a single family dwelling or a garden suite before in the RLS zones. I did review the section 28 in the North Bay MCA website, and it covers a lot of topics. It does address increasing dwelling units within building or structure. It does not say they are restricted within certain zones. It merely says that you need to get a permit. And like in a lakeshore capacity assessment, it did state that it should not result in a new increase in phosphorus loading to the lake impacts or reductions if there was municipal land use planning approvals and Crown land disposition decisions. So that would take in the Crown land dispositions as well. On our current planning website, which has been recently updated, it refers on a full page that secondary dwellings are permitted uses in R1, R2, RLS, and RU zones, and what should be considered. If there is or isn't such a document specifically detailing that no ADU secondary dwelling is permissible by North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, did the North Bay Mattawa and or township staff or any other municipalities, have they been consulted to look at a possible solution to not totally disqualify the RLS zone and or waterfront properties from 2.23 of the proposed OP to meet the various physical and financial needs of all residents, and also try to meet the provincial government's current agenda of affordable housing, and that at the same time ensuring no environmental impact? So have we looked at other solutions, or maybe more restrictive, or, I don't see any of that taking place. I know we haven't done it at this table. And because if there is no solution, at least PAC has inquired and addressed our concerns for our community members living in the zones affected that may have wanted to do an application for an additional unit, aging parents, whatever. Because it is a significant change to the zoning bylaw for existing property owners with buildings in the RLS zone, as permanent uses from 2013 to current are being removed in its entirety regarding ADU in regards to a second dwelling unit and or garden suite, and possibly other waterfront property owners, to a blanket no. So, as council, I mean, it's you that are gonna have to answer to the people, and, so another thing to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate all of that. And before I turn it over, perhaps I'm sure Simon or Nikki have comments that they would make. I would just say, I mean, obviously we find ourselves in a bit of a difficult. I can appreciate. I appreciate where you're coming from. What our staff are receiving back from the experts, planners, and North Bay senior managers of the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority is it's just not permitted. So, to put something forward that would be counter to that, it would be irresponsible on behalf of the municipality, in my humble opinion. We have to, they are the authoritative body when it comes to
But again-
this.
I'm sorry, again, there is no documentation, we're receiving this from a senior planner, and it's not as a whole. And do they have the authority to talk on behalf of the whole North Bay Madawatt Conservation Authority?
Absolutely.
My understanding is they've consulted their superiors in providing these responses.
So, and then there is the Town Lake study, which talks about that capacity.
But it also talks about that, they didn't feel it would have impact with any crown disposition of lands or municipal planning. But I mean, I get that, but also I think this is a bigger picture because it involves so many municipalities. And all the stakeholders have not come together to address it.
So there's a difference between following existing rules and then municipalities taking a lobbying position with conservation authorities or provincial government, quite frankly, is where that would likely have to be. So, I mean, that's two different paths. One can't necessarily, like, we can't stop a process from, like, if the mayor or council wishes to go down and make a lobbying effort with the municipality or with the minister or with the conservation authority, that can happen but that's a separate path that needs to be followed. I mean, that's going to be, we're asking for a change in environmental protection. We're asking for a change in a number of different studies to say, let's not worry about that study. So, that quite frankly is above my pay grade to be able to say that we're going to go and make that lobbying. That's, but frankly, I would defer to the mayor on that, and between the mayor and council determining what our lobbying position would be with the municipal or with the conservation authority.
If I may comment, the concerns that Gina has, I have the same concerns when it comes to this bylaw. That there are a number of municipalities there, unorganized township as well as Calvin as well as us. And we're developing a bylaw, which to me is good. But I am concerned where we have in our municipality that there's no further development on Talon Lake, right? And I've asked the question and nobody answered the question with respect to the Algonquin land claim. When that comes out, if they ever get a settlement, it's been going on a long time. But if there is they reach a settlement and the lake becomes open for development, and our bylaw says only in Bondfield, right? Our bylaw is pertaining to our municipality. So I do have a concern with that bylaw, and somewhere do we say subject? Do we say in there only subject to the Conservation Authority's decisions? Because what happens if it does become open and our bylaw says no development, right? In accordance with the Conservation Authority. And because there are a number of municipalities, there's reason to be concerned before we finalize the bylaw. That's my thoughts on it. Have we thought anything about the land claim, how that would affect us, or how it would affect the lake, because there is crown land there and unorganized township or townships without municipal organization. There is that. I'm just concerned that, and I understand we say, well, we're going along with the Conservation Authority, but to what extent, or how do we make provisions if there are changes on the lake?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we will be consulting all of the Algonquin First Nations and other groups as part of the consultation on this bylaw once if it passes and goes through to council. So there will be that opportunity for feedback there, and I'm pretty confident that at the conservation authority level itself that they have staff which are continuously engaged in that process, so they're aware with some of the legalities and probably use that to influence some of the inputs that they make into plans. And in terms of neighboring townships, yeah, I agree. I hope that it would be consistent, the feedback that other townships are receiving, but we can't necessarily, it's not our business, let's say.
Yeah, you want to see, the township of Bonfield can't do anything, and
Right.
on the rest of the lake, everybody's
But
building.
there's one
building
watershed,
buildings,
right?
right?
And everybody's impacted by that. So.
I think you make a good point, your worship. It would be great if our bylaw, if we could come up with creative words within our bylaw that said something to the effect of, it is not allowed based on the Conservation Authority's directive. If the directive ever changes, well, then our bylaw will just be, that becomes moot because the directive was changed.
I don't think they haven't a directive though.
Well, the directive
No.
that we continue to receive is.
They are, so they're the legal body that are, so under applicable law, I must obtain their approval
Yes,
for development.
yes.
If they say development is not permitted, I cannot by law issue a building permit. So our decision is based on that directive that they gave us, that there's to be no development.
Yeah, but it's only been a verbal directive
No,
is what mine
it's
It's
is.
in the
in writing.
emails that you've got
It's
in
in
your
writing.
package.
But if we didn't bring anything up this time around with
In
with
December.
the authority, then we'd still be allowed, or there's secondary dwelling units in these zones previous, right?
Yeah, I wasn't.
So
The
what
North
what
Bay-
we're
party
doing
to that,
is,
So I don't know.
what's that?
I wasn't party to that, so I don't know if they were consulted or I have no idea.
Yes, but no, because when you look at the official plan from 2013, there's a series of different clauses, if you like, within this, which constantly refer to the capacity of lakes and the need to consult with the Conservation Authority, lake capacity issues. These were flagged, and we did talk about this in a previous committee meeting. 2013, what's that? 12 years ago now. So these are not new issues. These have always been something that we've had to have regard to in issuing any permits in regard to those lakes. But I think we've reached a stage right now where, because we were looking to, and we haven't even spoken really about the positives of this bylaw yet, which hopefully we'll get back to, which were opening up so many new opportunities for development across the whole township. But just because there's that restriction being applied, because it's most likely that the lake health has declined, we can't be certain, but we know it's probably not got better because there hasn't been any remedial works or anything. There's more development that's taken place since 2017, since these studies were put in place, which are quite clear that these lakes are at capacity. So, and it is about that balance. It is about social, economic and environmental factors. So there's a few comments.
There's no updated, there's been water quality testing and the stream quality, and a lot of it has only had slight changes. If any. I guess I can't get that with our bylaw, we have never been officially told by North Bay Madawaska Conservation Area and sent to all the municipalities concerned, because of such and such and such, there will be no further ADUs, secondary dwelling permitted. I guess I'm used to having something like that when such a major decision is being made on and affects our community.
I think that they have provided that to us. So when we had the 2013 official plan, our official plan, and this bylaw will also, but
Mhm.
in the official plan, it must go to the Algonquins. It has to go to North Bay Madawaska Conservation Authority. It has to go to all of the ministries within the province. They all comment on it. And the only way that it gets adopted by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, if all of them agree to it. So if North Bay Madawaska Conservation tells us this is what we have to do based on a lake capacity assessment, that these are the
Yeah.
policies that are allowed, then that's their directive through our official plan. So they
Right.
did that in 2013. They don't have an updated plan since 2017 on the actual
Yeah.
assessment.
Mhm.
So they're still saying that those are the same, these are the policies that we currently have are the same policies that we must follow now.
Yeah.
So ADUs are essentially, yes, our bylaw speaks to secondary units, and yes, our bylaw speaks to garden suites. Those are outdated terms because the new trends, the new policies are additional dwelling units.
Mhm.
So not every municipality has started to review that yet. So, the other municipalities that are around the lake are probably not at the same spot we are in that review. In order for the Conservation Authority to sit down and look at this. So we do have a directive from our the representative that we deal with from the North Meadow Conservation, who has put it in an email a couple of times now to say that there shall be no development like that. The lake capacity that was done is for any vacant lots that are currently still out there, and they can be developed, single family dwelling. That's all it was based on. It wasn't based on a multi-use property for the septic to go into that. Like when they did that 2017 study, it was for single family dwelling use only, not for ADUs.
Mhm.
And I see the valid point about, there's so many other people that are affected by the ADUs, but we're not all in the same spot. So perhaps what the committee can do, following the directives and the information that we have, is have the bylaw move forward so we can still get ADUs in the other areas, but the RLS is our, the one that, we're like, why would we exclude them? Also add another resolution to ask council to direct staff to start that process with the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. So pass a resolution or a motion to say that you directed staff work with the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority and the neighboring municipalities to create a policy for ADUs, because not every municipality is at the same level in the ADU. So let's start that process with the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. Then we can send that to the Conservation Authority through our rep or right to the CAO. I can meet with the CAO from the North Bay Mattawa to say that this is something that we are, we want to have this reviewed. We want a formal opinion based on current data, and then they can then start creating that new directive, and they can have the new review so that we can come back. So we hope to have our full comprehensive review of the zoning bylaw done within the next 2 years. So if we paused RLS while we did that and then put it in with our zoning bylaw, the comprehensive zoning bylaw review, we would only be pausing it for 2 years, but then we would have the information and the evidence from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation to possibly put RLS eligible for ADUs. But I think there's a lot of work that has to be done before we can get the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority to say yes to that. I think we have to find the evidence. We have to look at the like the lake. We have to look at what are the impact of ADUs. And I'm not sure what that would look like at the end result, but we need to go through that process. But do we hold up development on the entire township while we're trying to do that process?
So can that zoning bylaw be amended? That's my,
Zoning bylaws are living documents.
so there you go. So
Yes, it
possibility to be a change.
absolutely,
Or
absolutely.
the other thing is to leave it in its, when it comes to RLS, leave it in its present state.
Okay,
And until we get more information, and go forward with it in the other zones.
So the present state is secondary dwelling units. Additional dwelling units isn't a category, so there'd be no standalone. It would be in addition to the property, right?
Yeah, but at least
okay.
there's that should somebody come up with something, they can at least apply to the North Bay Mattawa, and if they said, yeah, like your properties, you've got 3 acres
Mhm.
on waterfront, and I don't have any concern. And if they didn't, would you, Mike?
No, if I get their approval, then it's a green light for me.
Yeah,
Same
Well,
thing as ADUs, that's why we're here today, because
Yeah.
forever it's never been allowed. So it's been allowed for a couple of years now, so we're here right now to
yeah,
put
and
this
garden,
through. It's
yeah.
positive for everybody, right?
and
So we
garden
could do the same
suites.
thing for, if they've changed their minds, we certainly could revisit it and allow it.
Your worship.
I have a question. In the townships without municipal organization. If they already have their buildings, they have their septic, everything is installed. And they don't, if I'm understanding correctly, they don't have to get a building permit. They don't have to get a building permit in an.
And organized, that's changing, that's changing now. The minister has appointed himself as CBO as all unorganized townships. But I believe you still need your septic, right? So.
You
North
still
Bay
need your
Mattawa-
septic, but if a septic's already in existence. And you decide your home is there and you decide that you want an additional dwelling, what's to stop you if there's no. Building permit through the province and you say it's going to change. I would say that's the only way the Conservation Authority would be able to control the townships without municipal organization. Because right now, if they're in existence with a building and they have their septic. All they have to do is go out and put an additional dwelling there, and who's to control it? Unless, like you say,
North
they're-
Bay, maybe.
the province will be able to control that.
And I think the Conservation Authority can actually control that too. So if somebody made them aware, I mean, we have no jurisdiction on unorganized. But if somebody made the Conservation Authority aware that somebody added a dwelling to their septic, because the septic is approved based on what you're building.
Yeah,
So if somebody adds buildings to that septic and then somebody lodges a complaint to the Conservation Authority, they go out and
I
investigate
believe the
that.
Planning Act still prevails.
Yes.
You still have to go through a planning board.
no, there's no planning over in
Over here?
Phelps.
Okay, there's a planning board for other unorganized areas that I'm sure of.
No, well,
There's
the
east-
reason I
east
know.
Sudbury, so
it's-
over here, I don't know.
In Redbridge, they tried to come on board with our planning. They didn't have a planning board. And I know one of the girls in our office, they have two big homes on the property. They can't sever it. But there was no patrol or nobody stopped them from building two homes on there. And in the townships without municipal organization, I'm just wondering how they would control when they already have a home and they have the septic approval already. Because in the unorganized townships, you do have to have septic approval, doesn't matter where you are, but you don't need the building permit. And I could be wrong from that, but I don't think so. I believe that that's right now is unless they change it with someone else coming in. And unless Phelps is Redbridge. And they had met with us one day in a workshop. And they would have liked to have come in with our planning committee. Because of the money that it costs to keep the planning going. And at that time, we didn't have any money to spare.
Yeah.
So
There's
that's.
still not a ton of money to spare it off.
Yeah. If I can just go back into Gina's point, so yes, we can pass the resolution or the bylaw and keep it as is. I think the only thing to be aware of is once council approves that this bylaw is in draft form, it gets sent out to all of the agencies. Like we're mandated to send it through the Planning Act to all the agencies. One of those agencies are North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. So at that time, they can come back to say, no, you must take this out. And we would have no recourse. So, but we can absolutely try to put that forward and put the bylaw out that way. And then have everyone come in and provide those comments to us. And that will include the Aboriginal consultation as well. So they will tell us,
I think they already did
there's-
say the secondaries would not be permitted.
right? So, but if this committee wants to still recommend that we move forward with secondary dwellings, we're still recommending that it go forward as is
Is there,
currently.
in presenting it like to North Bay Mattawa, like in the emails when I read them, like we didn't kind of state to be with the government's current agenda in permitting additional dwellings. So I don't know if North Bay Mattawa looked at it at that perspective.
Well, I'll just stick up for, it's not their job to lobby the North Bay Mattawa
No, no,
Conservation
I'm
Authority
not
without
saying,
authority,
I'm not
right? So,
lobbying, I'm not, no.
yeah, I mean, they would just ask
Yeah.
for a straight up opinion from the Conservation Authority and what I read, that's exactly what they did. Was
Yeah,
But
they weren't trying to lead them down the garden path by any means.
And I think that's why it's important to add that other resolution, or the other motion to instruct or to ask council to instruct staff to start the conversation with Conservation Authority.
Or why is it that they just, because there's so many different scenarios? Because somebody with waterfront might only have a small lot. Whereas someone else can have quite a large lot. So why won't they come and just do it as a normal application and say yay or nay? Why is it an exact no?
I don't think it's as much based on lot size as it is the
Somebody
water
say it?
capacity to take on more additional dwelling units.
I
That's,
think.
Sorry.
What Gina's saying.
So there is an answer to that question. We could go back to that, yeah.
Yeah.
I have an important part to add to that. So if we go by the 300-meter setback that they're asking for. You would also need a 20-meter setback from the road
Mhm.
for building. Plus the width, the length of the building. So I did a survey on our CGIS mapping system. And not west of the bridge, but on Talon Lake. There's almost 200 lots that are bordering on the water. Of those 200 lots, there are 9 lots that are over 320 meters. And of those 9 lots, I think 3 or 4 are owned by the same person. So we're talking about 5 people.
But I think what Gina's scenario might actually also have is that if you have a house. Even within that zone that is established, 30, 40 years with septic that can accommodate whatever, two washrooms. And this person, updates the septic because it's outdated and they want to get a septic that will accommodate 5 washrooms. Then and increase that building size in its existing location. They're not gonna be permitted to do an additional or secondary dwelling unit. Even though that, let's say they meet the septic requirements, so we've just basically eliminated that.
Well, it's based upon the information that we're being given that the lake has reached a point of saturation where no secondary units would even be permitted, so.
No,
the
but
same
that's
would apply to
my
the
point is,
acreage.
so if I live on the lake and I have a septic and I wanna resize my septic, cause it's old. So I wanna pull that up and redo it, and I have the approval from the Mattawa Conservation Authority to increase the capacity of my septic, and then
Right.
also add another basement apartment for my mom.
Well, then you're adding the occupant load, which they're saying they're not permitting.
Yeah,
Well,
But these are all
no,
provisions
That's
that-
exactly my point is that,
They're
so
not
now,
permitting.
well, that's exactly what my point is, now we're having a second conversation.
Mhm.
Before it was, we're not doing additional, standalone houses, we're not doing additional dwelling units. Now, which we've just brought to the forward here, that I can't even increase the size of my house. And that's wrong, that should not be allowed, like, that's.
Yeah.
So you're basically, they're
you
based on
can't
the
increase the number of
27.
fixtures,
No,
you
but
could
the
possibly have an
27
addition.
Pardon?
You could possibly have an addition as long as there's no extra fixtures or impact on the septic system. So this development can still occur on these lots.
But so if my septic is outdated and I wanna upgrade it to a new septic. I can't even upgrade the size of the septic, is what you're telling me?
I think that part of it is that you would have an old septic, Mike could jump all over me if I'm wrong, but you'll have an older septic. There, since your house was built, let's say it was built in the 50s or the 40s or 50s, and since it was built. The design and the efficiency of a septic system have changed. So that has to be reviewed with the North Bay Mattawa Conservation. That is completely outside of our jurisdiction, but there may be newer technologies in place. There may be new things that.
No, I understand.
And I think that would speak to your point about,
But I just
both
heard,
points about,
but I just heard
Yeah.
that I can't increase the capacity of,
No,
I
that's-
can't add fixtures.
No, so if you would increase your system, that's fine, to be more efficient, whatever. But you can't increase the occupant load on that septic system, right? So if you've got it
property.
designed for 5 people right now and you design it for 15 people, that's fine, but you can't add 10 people to put more load on the system, right?
And I think
That's
that's why
where it
this
doesn't make sense.
that second motion
That's-
to
that's-
start
that's
the
a state-
conversation to change
Sorry.
that.
Are you saying without increasing the capacity of the septic?
No, so North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority has based a decision on you can't increase, like, I'm using occupant load because that's what we're using building, but you can't increase the occupant load. You can't have additional people on the property, right?
I've never seen that in any of the correspondence. They said that they, of their opinion, that's what it was. That's why I kind of stand with Gina. We don't have an official issued document. It's basically, people that work there that are giving their opinion. I have an issue with that because it's not like a release, right? So it's like me going and giving an opinion to other residents.
Okay, but when they came back with that opinion, they said they would not approve any additional capacity. So by increasing your septic to accommodate for 15 people, if you're gonna put an apartment in the basement, that's increasing capacity.
Listen, there's vacant lots. So how do they know capacity? Because if you're telling me that my neighbor who has a vacant lot can put a septic, if they can fit it, let's forget about the little details, but if they can fit it, they can get a septic that could have, let's say, let's go by fixtures, because that's what they do, right? So they could do 5 washrooms and 2 kitchens. Then automatically, then my neighbor is beyond capacity. So now what you're saying is that the Manitoba Conservation Authority actually is restricting this, not only that fact that they're restricting me from upsizing my residence, but they're also restricting the size of the residence of the vacant lots. That has not been in the conversation either, right?
No, we never said that.
No, but that's what I'm saying though. Like, so if they're restricting an existing dwelling unit, then, but they're allowing your neighbor to go big, it doesn't make sense. That's why I have.
Yeah, I agree with where you're going in that conversation. I think it's outside of the conversation from additional dwelling units, right? I mean, I can appreciate what you're
Well, no,
saying.
but see, the thing is this, yes, it's outside, but not necessarily, because as I said in one of the emails, is a basement apartment not an additional dwelling unit?
According
Yes.
to- yeah, the
Yes, so
attached
so hinging on that point, then you can upsize your house and make it a basement apartment, and you just need to upsize by 1 or 2 fixtures.
You've increased capacity, which they
You
won't
still
approve.
have to call it a
They-
single family
They
dwelling.
did not say they're not, they did not say anywhere in those emails that you can't increase the capacity of a house. You can do addition. It doesn't clearly state that. It's not clear, and
I'm sure I read it, but
no.
it's increasing capacity. Right?
This is the problem, is that we're taking these guys' words on interpretation.
We have to. If they tell us they won't approve it. I have no, like, even if I want to, I can't say, well, I don't agree. How did you come to that decision? I don't have that authority. The
Well,
question. their
I know,
authority.
but it's on us to basically push back and get the proper documentation.
It's on us to balance the opinions of everybody, which includes the PAC members and the professionals that come to us. So we're the ones stuck in the middle here, right?
Yeah,
So there is a series of different emails in here. No additional dwelling units could be added, and no existing lots should be further severed to create new lots.
correct.
So that's one. I just some highlights, different bits. But yeah, essentially, the studies indicate that lakes north of Highway 17 are already at land use capacity for additional dwelling units.
Land use capacity for additional dwelling units.
Yeah.
So they've calculated everything from the trailer parks to all the existing and also potential future. So where's the documentation saying that current houses cannot be increased in occupant load? It doesn't clearly define that, so that's the issue I
So, but it
have.
would have to continue to be, like, I don't think you could create an apartment, like, the difference would be increased capacity, if that's allowed, call it like. Now all of a sudden you could go from 3 to 5 people, I don't think you'd be able to create an apartment.
No, I'm not saying that,
Right.
but as I'm trying to make sure.
I agree, oh, I agree with you
No,
now.
I'm just saying.
We're trying to make sense of a system that's like.
Well, there's people that have houses there that have a small modest house, with a modest septic and vacant lots beside them. And if vacant lots get permitted to build, 6-bedroom house because they can. And the neighbor says, well, I'd like to increase my house, and they can't. That's the problem I'm having with this situation. That's where I'm going with this, right? And I don't see anywhere in their documentation that is clear.
And I think that would still, so through that documentation, if someone has a single family dwelling and they want to add the apartment, it would still have to, in order to do that improvement, you still have to go and get a record, a file, a record, or you need to, you need permission from the North Main Valley Conservation. Either you need to increase the septic, which at that time they would review based on the policies that they have regarding lakeside capacity, or I think it's called a record, a file of record, or
Yeah.
an opinion that, so that the septic system that you currently have will hold the capacity for the change you want to do in your house.
Mhm.
So that process, I don't think will change. So that'll still be case by case. But if you are going to put in an application to say, I'm going to have a detached additional dwelling unit, or I'm going to have a secondary dwelling
Yeah,
on my property, that's when it will fall under, into the use.
So we're here because of the provincial government basically is trying to, they'll build homes fast, right?
Attainable and affordable primarily, but
Right.
yeah.
So I'm not 100% certain on this, but I did find something. There's recent amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act also that was basically enacted last year, April 1st, 2024. And in that act, they had, the province had changed the reduced regulation of adjacent lands to provincially significant wetlands. This change limits conservation authorities' ability to review and mitigate development impacts beyond 30 meters.
Yeah.
It used to be 120.
That's right.
So have they implemented that?
Yeah, that's in all of the
Mhm.
decisions that we're making on applications. That's what they've given is the 30
So
meter.
30 meters.
We've applied that in condition on some applications. Yeah.
So I don't see how 30 meters could impact lots of these lots.
But I think if it's at capacity, like it's one thing if it's a lake that's not at capacity, then yeah, go ahead. If it's at
Yeah.
capacity,
Yeah,
that's when they're.
It
Exactly.
has been for 5
Exactly.
years.
But if your septic is beyond that,
But it's still, but.
Yeah.
I sound like I'm arguing with, I agree with you on like, this is bonkers. I'm just like, we have to figure out how to like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes
make
back
it-
to
there is some potential gray there because we are relying on, I get it. We have a senior manager who has said, yeah, it's not allowed. I have asked staff, like, same questions you're asking. If you can show me, like, just show me the black and white, like, here it is. The
Mhm.
formal from the Conservation Authority. We don't have it, but there's lots of things that the Conservation Authority will send back to the municipality based off of a senior planner's opinion, because that's the authority that they have. So here we are, and the mayor made a good point, I think you've made some, like, everybody's making good points. I just don't know that we're able to solve this sitting at the planning advisory table, committee table for Bonfield. So I think that if we can come up with some level of language that talks about ADUs in the RLS, like with the strict permission of the Conservation Authority, which they need anyways. So, but at the end of the day, we have to be careful that when we send it, we're not writing it in a way that looks like we're trying to circumvent the Conservation Authority. We have to write this bylaw in a way that respects what we've received from the Conservation Authority. Well, I think the mayor made a good point. If we can write it in a way that says, if it changes, we're not stuck with this. Like, if they change their mind, all of a sudden Town Lake's not at capacity, or they no longer have an interest in that, I'm sorry. That we're not, I'm sorry, that we're not, I kicked her maybe a couple of times, I apologize. That we're not stuck with this old now piece of a bylaw that if they stop caring, then, we can look at that and say, if they're based on science and evidence, well, then we can be based on science and evidence and allow it, because I am pro-development. Listen, if we can get more assessment on a beautiful property on the lake, and hey, that's great news. Like, that's
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
news for the municipality. How do we balance that, right?
but as it stands, if the lake quality is diminishing, then it's going to devalue everybody's property on the lakes too, right? Why would you want to live on a lake that's got no fish because it's been poisoned to the extent that
I think
it's not a healthy watershed?
Yeah, from what I've been reading, though, it hasn't got worse since 2013. It's kind of maintaining itself.
There hasn't been a
Let's-
ton of development there, though, I don't think, right? So
Yeah,
it's-
yeah.
At least not authorized.
So,
I mean, there's been some
so-
intensification of use of some
I have a
properties.
question.
Yeah.
So Simon, you said that we are,
They don't
we are
wanna
basing this
open
on the 30.
Anybody want
right?
water or anything?
Well, the 30 meters is the minimum area within which they have to be consulted
Right.
and provide feedback. So,
So-
but that's specifically in regards to like kind of just their assessment of how the septics relate to the watershed. But in this case, because the lakes are at capacity,
It's
That's my point, though,
It's
right?
300
That's my
meters.
point. Who says the 300? That's,
it's in the official plan
they deemed
It's
it.
in the Talon Lake
and in that,
assessment.
No, but who?
So it's in the
who-
North Bay Matter Conservation Authority. So they are,
No, that's what I'm trying to get at. This
Yeah.
is a new regulation.
Yeah.
And it took it back from 120 to 30. We're
Yeah.
talking about 300 here. That's in
So-
our plan and also, based on what? They deemed it at capacity because they're choosing to do.
at the
because-
2017
Yeah.
report, deemed it at capacity. So they did a study on the lake in 2017,
Right.
deemed it at capacity and put in the provisions that we must follow because the lake is at capacity. So when it goes to the 30 meters, so whenever there's a consent, we have to send that consent application to the North Bay Matter Conservation Authority, right? They look at that and it's the same senior manager who's providing us the directives on here, who provide us the directives for the consent application. And then those are the conditions that we put into the consent application that we must put forward for approval. Because that's our duty, like that's what we have to do. So it's the same, but because those policies, yes, it's changed to 30 for their line. But the policies are still in there because the lake is at capacity. But I agree that if we, again, go back to that other, I believe we need to nudge the Conservation Authority.
Yeah.
Into doing a review and Bonneville Council, if you guys choose, then we can do that to nudge them into, let's do this review. We want to look at these policies.
The reality is, we're sitting here without authority to do anything in the RLSs. We have it in writing from a senior manager at the Conservation Authority. I like Nikki's plan that if council agrees, if the mayor and council agree that we work with other municipalities to, like, let's ask for an updated study on the lake. Let's make sure that everything's consistent. We'll ask for a policy to be developed that is consistent for all municipalities. I think you make a good point.
Yes.
Sorry, did you have something else to add? Sorry.
I have another question. And I'm not sure where I read it. The existing lots that are on the lake now where there are no buildings.
Mhm.
And did I read in here in one of the reports that provisions have been made in their study? Development of their lots
Yes.
already?
Yes.
So that's not as if there are lots there, we're not going to sever any additional lots according to, because the Conservation Authority won't approve it.
Correct.
But there are provisions made in their decision to accommodate the vacant lots that are there
Yeah,
already.
That's right.
Yeah.
A single
And-
dwelling
and
unit.
To Cam's question, I don't know this, so I'm assuming they probably have some mathematical equation that they use for
An
how many,
average.
an average,
Yeah.
right? I doubt it's gonna be 6 homes of 15 people in a row, like that's,
Yeah.
so they would use some sort of an equation.
And I would say that would be the most equitable approach for this 2-year period, if that's the solution that we're looking at, is that anyone who hasn't developed out their lot yet, that they should be given priority or preference over lots where there already is an existing residence and someone's looking to increase that development. Because, they too have investments in those properties, and it's right that they should
Yeah.
be able to develop them.
When I saw this document, it says also that the prohibitions on development activities have been changed to within 30 meters of all wetlands. So that's kind of my concern, is that we're implementing these provincial guidelines and maybe they're not doing that at the same pace. So that's my concern, like what Gina said, maybe they're not on board yet.
So when they define wetlands, do they define that as swamps or dark water, bodies of water? Do they differ that from a clear water trout lake? Because there's a
No,
big difference,
so
right?
Right.
Conservation Authority of Ontario defines wetland areas of land that are covered by water for long enough to support aquatic plants and wildlife and have the following characteristics, and then this, the water table is close to whatever surface and blah, blah, blah. They're basically,
All one,
uh-huh,
all wetlands are
Basically,
the
yeah.
same, yeah.
In in the, for existing lots, they wouldn't have to be back the 300 meters first that you're referring to.
that's a
I'm
very
a
good
little
question.
confused with this
Yeah.
300 meters.
the 300 meters, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be as the crow flies 300 meters, it's the outflow. So let's say even if a property was within 120 meters of the high water mark, as long as the outflow kind of arced around, and that was at least 300 meters. That's the key.
And it's been in for quite some time.
The policy or
Yeah,
yeah, it's it's in our current official plan, so
yeah.
we can
okay.
still continue to
Okay, I know some.
approve or
people that
refuse
have
anyone
gotten,
based on those policies that we already have.
septics that-
So
You know, I'm thinking it had to be 300 meters. No.
Man, their outflow probably
No,
snake around a million ways.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, oh, sorry, go ahead, Gina.
Well, I know, what we're saying and what, Cam is saying too, if we went to develop, if somebody went to develop their own property and wanted to update their septic because it was time to put one in, well, they're probably not, and they wanted to put in an additional ensuite or something. And so North Bay Mattawa would come along and, allow it. So it's just kind of funny that you can have an additional unit even within your own residence for your aging parent so that they can live independently, but you could do all this and just don't have separate a separate doorway or entrance for them, but you're still at the same capacity.
same family, not a
See,
different family.
Well, no,
Why
it
not?
could be, it could be
Yeah,
a
it could
border,
be,
it could be,
yeah.
whatever, so it's
We're all
like.
very practical people. We're having a hard time. in practicality.
Okay, another government would say, well, where's the common sense?
No,
I
hey,
think that's why we nudge, let's
Yeah.
get common sense in there.
Yeah, yeah, because you're still having the same amount of using the facilities and showers and same amount of laundry. And yet you're saying, okay, no more, even, secondary dwelling. So that, I think that's what I've been having a hard time in my review is
Same
try.
here.
Oh, I think we're all struggling with that common sense piece. Like, even when we sit, we're still struggling with that common sense piece. But like, so you can do it this way, but you can't do it this way or this way. But our focus of this bylaw was for additional dwelling units, right?
Which
So-
I think of a single family, a component of an additional dwelling, one and the same, almost just called differently.
Yeah.
Just a new modern day.
So we're all pretty smart people. I think, what if we came up with language that's to the effect of ADUs within RLS zones shall be considered consistent with the directives of the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, something to that effect.
Mhm.
And then if something switches with their directives, if we can get more clarity, if we get, then at least it's just consistent with the directives of the
Or
North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. That's respecting their authority, which they have. And we don't have the authority to override it, so.
rather than totally excluding, and if North Bay Mattawa, somebody has a piece of property and they're going, "Well, I don't see any problem with having a unit, a separate, single
Yeah, which is. yeah, if we
secondary
do it
dwelling.
Considered consistent with the directives of the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, if they change a directive for. Half the lake, well then. We'll follow the.
And then I guess and come back as the municipalities making up this rule and
Right.
won't let us do it. If it's.
They
if
won't
it's
reject
consistent- If it's consistent with the conservation authorities. The
It shall
rule,
be permitted.
Subject,
so-
subject to their approval.
Yeah, I'll just say, the reality is, that's consistent with all of our zones, not just RLSs, but. Where we're getting language to say it's not allowed, I'm trying to figure out a balance to say, all right, we will respect that for now. And we will look to you know, change that if somebody wants to apply, if the homeowner wants to work or a property owner wants to work with the conservation authority to allow Mike to issue a permit.
And we also need to amend that RLS to add, there are other zones on the lake, right? There's CZ zones on the
Right.
lake. So we can't just use that one term.
Right.
Or any zones.
So in the bylaw, there's section 3.45.5, which say, you know, so the one before says a maximum of 2 ADUs shall be permitted in the following zones. And that talks about the density zones in the rural zone. Then 45.5 says that ADUs shall not be permitted. I'm sorry, it is page 5. Page numbers at the top of the bylaw.
And you're on 3, 4, 5.
3.45.5. So if we just said ADU shall not be permitted, because this is where we talk about anywhere where it's the commercial or incompatible. So we could just remove the one and just say, remove one where it says residential limited services, because we don't really speak to particular zones anywhere else. We could just say where the North Bay Matter of Conservation deems that they're not permitted. Because then they will be the ones telling us. So it's still their language, it's still their directive. But it's not us saying no, it's where they shall not be permitted where, and is giving the public the information that they have to go and get the permission from North Bay Matter Conservation Authority before we can do any approvals.
Yeah, because
That's what we were looking at, that we could, rather than it be no right here
Right.
in our bylaw, that I could, or you, anybody could go and talk to them and say, geez, you really need to come out to my place and
Yeah.
see if I could be allowed to
Yeah.
do this.
The only thing is they don't come out to do pre-consult. So North Bay Matter, so you have to put you have to go through the work
Yeah.
of putting the
Yeah.
septic proposal together. Of having someone design it, you have to spend the money on it, and then the Conservation Authority, they won't come out to pre-approve. So then you're out that money if they say no.
which,
Oh, you might
So-
be able to have a little chit chat with them, who knows?
yeah, like what I'd like
I
is.
can't get them here.
is some level of a caution within our bylaw that would flag to people. I probably, before I make a huge investment in my property, there's probably more work to do to make sure that
Yeah.
I can do what I want to do, what my plans are on my piece of property.
Uh,
So I don't want to lead people astray to think it's okay if what we're seeing
Mhm.
currently from the one senior planner,
Mhm.
we don't need to rehash it, we're
No,
back to the bang our
no.
head against, but. Like, that's what we're currently receiving as, just so you know, if you go to the Conservation Authority, you can anticipate a no based off all of the literature that we've received so far and correspondence we've received from them. That's just us being good stewards, I think, to help somebody to make smart decisions on.
But that could apply to somebody else being all excited about an ADU, because there's gonna be a lot of people that won't be approved. So they could be in the same situation,
Yeah, so,
that they get all excited and they do all the work and they come out and they look at their septic
Yeah.
and they've done the application and spent money, and it could be a no for
yeah,
anyone.
could be
Yeah.
the size of the lot, could be
Yeah.
the
A
setbacks.
variety.
Which
Mhm.
we've mentioned all of this in here. So what I don't want to do is just skirt totally away from talking about the Conservation Authority. Is the deciding body on this. I think the mayor makes a good point. Let's put the onus on them. But it's incumbent upon us to make sure that it's not. It's a yes until you get and then behind the scenes, we're like, well, until you get the Conservation Authority, because that's not good stewards on behalf of.
And that's why I think we already talked about this, there's not gonna be. There may not be a big demand because of there's a person's septic system will not be able to incorporate an
Yeah.
ADU.
I don't think that there's gonna be a landslide of
Like I
ADUs
do.
in RLSs, like, I don't think
Yeah.
that's what which. The practical part of me says, like, we as a municipality have asked staff, mayor and council instructed staff. We want to take a proactive approach on, let's get ahead of, how can we get ADUs, how can we support our housing? How do we make sure that our community is ahead of the curve on making sure we have appropriate housing that's affordable and attainable, and this is, that's the precipice of this. And now we're stuck on like what feels like I mean, it's conservation authority, but feels like it's this much of what we're trying to get done and we're just tripping over ourselves. So I'm trying to come up with language to say.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much good, I think we can all agree, there's so much good in this bylaw about opening up what people can do within the municipality, from hunt camps to storage containers and like all of that, ADUs and all of the other zones, like so much good stuff that is coming from this. We just gotta get it. Gotta figure out how to nudge that one more step. And so can we revisit the language on how we would?
Well,
So
yeah.
I'll ask them and like to make sure I'm using the right word, but in 3.45.5, take us a one where it says it shall not be permitted within the residential limited services. And instead of that, put any lands deemed unsuitable by the North Bay Manitoba Conservation Authority.
Yeah.
Because that could be any
There you go.
property at all. So does that mean, but is lands the right word, or should it be any property?
Land and property.
Properties.
Property.
Property? Okay. Any property deemed,
Which,
and would that work for everyone?
yeah, and that's consistent with every other zone, not just RLSs.
Any property deemed unsuitable by the conservation.
Shall not be permitted.
Any property deemed unsuitable.
So are you removing I from that?
Yeah.
Or substitute, yeah.
I think like you said, the heads up, if we would leave I and just add. RLS not approved by the Conservation Authority,
Any.
because it gives you a heads up, like you said, right? Because if somebody invests in lands and
Mhm.
why didn't you tell me type of thing. This is sort of a red flag that, hey, there's something happening here. I like your idea.
We can, and I'm just trying to figure out, in case they all of a sudden change it for RLSs and because whatever work happens. What if we, such as potentially residential limited services zones. Like, it's almost an example of something that might be. From the conservation authorities issue, like it's an issue from the conservation authorities. But it's only an example of potentially, doesn't stop people from going to the conservation authority, it's not a no, if they get the yes. It's potentially,
Because I'm not really sure North Bay Mattawa is right up to snuff on all this. No, seriously.
Well, I'm not gonna call their authority.
No, no,
I hope they don't watch this meeting.
The surplus
This is
of.
on YouTube.
I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
Oh,
But,
they're watching.
yeah,
They were supposed to be here tonight, but an emergency happened and they were unable to
We
attend.
got, no,
They're
20 minutes.
definitely watching.
no, because, you know, all the municipalities haven't gone to them yet. It
Oh, yeah, all
sounds
the
like,
municipalities are up to snuff on all
no,
of
that's
this.
what I mean.
Yeah.
So therefore, you know, they haven't had the,
We're definitely,
examples and.
we're definitely breaking some ground on this.
Yeah.
The municipality of Bonfield is ahead of the curve. Look at us go, eh?
There may be a reason why the others aren't.
They're watching.
They're watching.
Yeah, they're watching, yeah.
Saying,
Yeah, exactly.
"What?"
Let's save ourselves a half a dozen meetings like
Yes.
those guys had. Okay, so are we close? So,
Getting there.
I have a question about something else, well, ADUs,
What about this?
hang on the RLS, hang on one sec, Eric.
not RLS there, but.
Yeah, give us 1 sec. We're gonna
Okay.
iron this out and
Okay.
we're gonna jump onto your question.
Okay.
Okay,
The other, a maximum of 2. In the fall, so,
so we might be able, okay, so what Gina is saying is that we're not expressly saying that, yes, you can have them in the RLS in the provision right above that. So the 3.45 is a maximum of 2, but it's only in the density zones and the rural zone. So it's not in the RLS. It's not, we're not saying yes to RLS. We're not saying yes to commercial. We're not saying yes to industrial. So, but maybe that's how we do the red flag for the RLS. In saying that if
Right.
by not expressly permitting them in the 3.45.4. Then that's where they come into the 0.5 where we say any property deemed. So if somebody in an RLS can get that approval from the North Bay Manitoba Conservation Authority. Then they can come to revise the bylaw.
What if,
Do we want to do that?
Can we not put a 4
Like Joe Wording,
and
stick
say
with that.
in the RLS upon,
But then would somebody else from another zone, because as Mike said, and around the lake, there's other zones other than RLS. So
60.
then we pretty much have to say every zone can have one, but we don't want
We
to allow
agreed
them in every
60.
zone, because it's really about that
That's what we
affordable
said.
and attainable, right?
well, why don't we say
So-
residential RLS?
Well, that's what
Same
it is,
thing.
residential
Wouldn't be
limited
so.
services,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah,
That's what it
so
is.
it's, yeah, that's,
But then we also have multi-res, and we also have things that we've specifically excluded.
but they
So
never
how
had
do
it
we make
before.
it, how do we make it a red flag that there is extra work to do in the RLS? Without giving them,
Is it residential
Open.
limited service or recreational limited service?
oh, you're right, recreation,
Yeah. Could be residential.
because we don't have a residential limited services, it's recreational.
Oh, sorry. Typo. It's spell checker. Yeah, we can change that too. Well, it says recreational on there. Look.
yeah, it should say residential or recreation.
Recreational.
Oh.
We don't, yeah, that's what the R stands for. So what if you added a 4? Gosh, I hate doing this with it, but what if we added a 4 that said other provisions were residential? No, because you can have residential and commercial, so that won't work. I was gonna say that, what if we put the words wherever residential purposes are allowed? But you're allowed to have residential and commercial, you're allowed to have residential and industrial, it just has to be a lot, there's a lot more tape with that. A lot more
What
restriction,
if you did pure residential? Without commercial?
but we don't have a zone called that.
Well, let's try one of those tonight, and problem solved. Your worship, you in? Done.
For this additional.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Because
Say
it's
60
leaving it open, right?
Yeah,
No.
You can put number 4.
And that's leaving it open. Okay, make sure I have that clear. It's leaving it open for development.
Yep.
Or leaving it open for additional information from the Conservation Authority.
Yep.
Which one?
Well, it's
Both.
both in the sense
Both.
that the comprehensive
Okay.
review is going to take place anyway. This is just to preempt and, to get a handle on the different trends of development that we've been seeing. So the official plan, we're still going to be back here, talk about the official plan, then we'll get back in the comprehensive bylaw. So it's an ongoing process, but this is an interim addition for now, for the next 2 years. So
You put number 4 and then put the RLS pending North Bay Conservation Authority approval.
Typically, you don't do that, like, you don't bracket anything in a zone bylaw.
yeah, I
Well, we
think
already
We
said,
would have, like, you have to put the zone as it is, right?
so what if you actually just said a maximum of 2 ADUs shall be permitted in any of the following zones pending Conservation Authority approval, although then it's no more of a flag.
It's
for RLS
always
than it is.
pending.
It's always pending that, because we already say that that's addressed in there.
But
But
if
if we
put it
leave
this
it-
way, if the lake's already at capacity, so if you're adding 1 ADU, which is currently what we only provide for anyway, right? To all of the lakefront properties, they're still gonna add to the capacity issue. So if you were to then say, oh, let's have 2 because it's everywhere else. Like, it's not gonna fix the
Oh, I see what
problem,
you're
is it?
saying. Yeah, sorry. I was-
It's not gonna fix it, so
well,
1 would be the maximum if it can, that the whole lake capacity issue can be addressed.
Yeah.
So,
And then maybe in 5, 10 years, 15 years, maybe there's been a whole comprehensive program of lake remediation and we've done property standards or people have upgraded the septics and it's the cleanest water you've ever seen. Then maybe at that stage we could add a second ADU into the mix. But this is a legacy of development that's taken place in these lakes, which were not meant for permanent year-round residential use. They were traditionally recreational properties.
Yeah, this is a silly question, sorry. We don't have any other RLSs that we're not talking about tonight, right? Like, there's no other zoned RLS that's outside of.
no, there aren't.
I just have one more thing to say. I think that the members, our committee members, um. Have a concern, well, I shouldn't speak for anybody else, I'm gonna speak for myself. I have a concern that. It didn't, even though there is information here from the Conservation Authority. That it didn't seem to be public information, you know, when they cut development down on Trout Lake for, I don't know what it's like now. But it was out in the papers, the Conservation Authority has done this, and I think at this point. The only knowledge that we have of that, really, I didn't hear it before that there wasn't any development. The only knowledge I have of that is what we have here tonight.
Right.
And
And our
I would
bylaw.
like something more official coming from the authority, Conservation Authority. And that's just my opinion, but I'm not sure if it seems to be what you're speaking about too, is you would like something more official that says there on development or no further development on the lake because of the additional townships and unorganized township and it's applicable to the whole lake, not just to the township of Bonville.
I think
And that's the concern I have, is that it seems like it's not.
I think we would all like that, for sure. And we're stuck in this, I'm gonna call it gray zone, but it's not super gray because we don't have that, and that is the gold standard, what we would like to actually have. But unfortunately, what we have is a senior manager at the Conservation Authority saying it's not allowed in the RLS. So how do we strike the balance to not mislead people that it's allowed in the RLS? When really what we have is the same person who, if tomorrow somebody made an application, would say, no, it's not allowed. And we know that ahead of time. Now, I see your point where Calvin,
I'm not trying to
No,
discredit the Conservation Authority, I'm not doing that,
No.
I'm just saying my
It
opinion
has
that
been made public.
more public, more out in the public that.
by the Conservation Authority,
Yeah,
Well, I think when we go to public consultation with our bylaw, it will become more public. It was probably public when we did the 2013 zoning bylaw, right? So there would have been meetings, there would have been consultations with the zoning bylaw where their policies that are restricting the RLS are in our zoning bylaw. They would have had a public meeting when they had the assessment for the Talon Lake. So it would have been, but it's just not current public, which is why that nudge would be very helpful. But we're, at this point, we just need to come up to a draft bylaw that council can present to the public and send to all of the agencies for the feedback and the comment. And North Bay Mara Conservation is part of that. So when they send something back to say that, no, we don't agree with this part of your bylaw, that comes out in the public meeting. And I think that's when we start to have that conversation.
which quite frankly, the loudest voice that would change or advocate with the Conservation Authority would be the public at that point, right? So, and that's where council can look and say, we have no choice but to follow what has been provided to us from the Conservation Authority, which we have in writing. It's not in a sealed document or a stamped document, but we have it. We have to follow that. However, if the homeowners or the property owners want to, much like they did on Trout Lake, make a big stink about it, that's how it becomes very public, because it's the citizens that are now advocating for change from the Conservation Authority. If you're gonna call that lake at saturation, prove it, show it to us, we disagree with it, they can go. They can absolutely have that conversation with the Conservation Authority. Unfortunately, we're just the bystander going. Like, yeah, hey, like,
All the municipalities have representation on the Conservation Authority Board. So that's pretty important information. And it should be given to the board members to convey to their municipality. That's
I think you're the,
all I'm saying.
I think you and I could probably encourage our representative to bring that forward to the Conservation Authority. I think that's probably something you and I could do.
maybe, maybe this is the place then, since it's going to them. And you said, because we're the PC Advisory Committee and we also represent the you know, somewhat for the public.
Absolutely.
So why don't we, put it in here for them to make comment on?
We've done that already.
Yeah.
No, but because this is gonna get circulated.
So we've presented that potential to them and they've said no. And I read the North Bay, I forget if it was their official plan or their zoning bylaw, but they do not permit any ADUs within 300 meters of Trout Lake.
I was gonna say that too. Yeah.
That's not right.
What's the date on that document?
Very recent, this.
Is it?
Yeah, I
last
read it
fall.
online. I forget if it was the official
It's
plan or
2024.
or their zoning bylaw. I forget one of the other, perhaps
North
both.
Bay's done EDUs, but so they've done them and it's in there as well. But if we leave the wording as I suggested, that any property deemed unsuitable by the North Bay Matter Conservation Authority. And we leave it as it is, this is a 2-year interim until we get the comprehensive. And then we have to spend those 2 years, and when we go to public consultation, that part may change because the North Bay Matter one, based on the public, whatever might happen, it may change. Or if somebody does come in before we have that comprehensive, or North Bay Mattawa Conservation has changed their policies. If this is 2 years, if somebody on the RLS, because we've already determined that really there's only like 9 properties that this might apply to, we could do a site-specific zoning. And then we can still allow them in that while we're doing this bigger review with the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, it can still happen, but only if the Conservation Authority says yes, because their property meets the regulations that are required.
What's the process to do site-specific zoning?
There's an application, it's a public
bylaw.
process, and it's a bylaw amendment at council
goes
level,
That we would lead.
at council, yeah.
Right, we wouldn't be asking the property. owners
To
to-
process it, the onus would be
Yeah.
on the applicants to do all
Well,
the
that-
evidence and whatever's required to make their
But
case.
really, the only evidence is the North Bay Mattawa Conservation, so if the North Bay Mattawa Conservation does a review of their property. Right, because that's the only thing that would be in question, if it met all the lot sizes, everything else. And North Bay Mattawa Conservation did that review and they said, yes, okay, you can get a septic, then we can move forward with the zoning amendment. And council can pass a special bylaw that would say that any of these ones, we would waive fees. Because it's just an interim period, right? I'm not really recommending that we waive fees, but it could be at cost. Because it's just a short term, we just need something short term. But we don't want to hold up development through the entire municipality with this bylaw, because we need something short term with the Conservation Authority.
Well, right now, short term, we do have anybody in all of these zones could apply for a secondary dwelling, which is in effect is an ADU within their structure.
Yeah, as long as
Yeah.
one entire wall
Yes,
connects.
Yeah.
So-
so
But
right now,
according to the advice given and whether you call that an official correspondence or not, the development of the lots would be based on single dwelling unit. The additional secondary units were not intended to be built.
no, I'm talking about the 1 and 2 that we're not holding anyone up for that
Right,
right now, anyways.
but we are, because we're
Yeah.
not moving the bylaw forward,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
we're holding up.
And it's because
And sorry, and that they
then
would
maybe-
not recommend or consider any further development near those lakes. So that's their
I was
position.
talking about people in the rural.
These ones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
These ones.
those ones,
Right.
that they would still comply with a secondary dwelling, like, or an EDU. Within a structure,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still
yeah.
still
So,
subject to
yeah, they
permits, but
already
it's
have a
likely to
by-
be easier.
Yeah, they already have a bylaw to go by in the current official plan,
A zoning bylaw.
yeah,
No, does rule allow secondary dwelling?
yeah,
It does, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
I think your idea of zoning amendments, the easiest way to go, we could proceed and. Out of the 9 zone, I think there's 5 people that own 9 lots, I think 5 people own them. That's it, one guy owns like 3 or 4 of them. And. We could proceed and
And so
we can
if
make a
they're
zoning
interested
amendment, yeah.
it
in
doesn't,
RLS,
it doesn't help that. One, a lot of people, should they had wanted to apply. For their aging parents. There's no concession.
They most likely would have been refused.
Mhm.
Yeah, from what he's
Mhm.
what he's saying. even though we do have some arguable points that it's almost silliness, I'm sorry to say, because they're still using the same amount of,
I know, I could argue with you on your behalf.
yeah.
And if the authority says no,
Mhm.
my hands are tied.
I know.
Yeah, but it
It
was
would be
just,
illegal to.
They are relying on the most recent study, which unfortunately isn't super recent, which is, I think, Nikki's point of let's see how we can get them
yeah, but
to take a fresh look at it.
now a whole group of people are left without anything when they had something. Because even what we just did doesn't help them.
Well, it does. They would just have to do site-specific zoning for it.
I don't think that they had something. I think on paper they might have had something. I think what we've learned is if it went to the Conservation Authority, they didn't have what they thought they had.
I don't know. I
And the
think
reason
that-
we were looking to
I
take
don't think
garden,
They thought that, I'm sure we could have went and got, one of the technicians out there. And they would have possibly approved it, because I'm not sure everybody was on the same page.
Well, but they are now.
Well, they're not quite, because.
Yeah.
Well, in the
Because-
Conservation Authority they are, because we're talking to both parties now, right?
Yeah,
So,
but earlier I mentioned this reduction from 120 meters to 30 meters, and you said that that's implemented in the zoning, but the zoning this is recent, so it's not, it's an outdated number. We don't know if they're gonna be.
they're two separate things. So one is the section 28 permits, which relate to, if you like, the setback between or the control area or influence that the Conservation Authority has over the watershed in regard to property. And then the other one is the 300 meters, which relates more to at capacity lakes, which is in line with the lake capacity handbook. So the two different considerations. It specifically gives the at capacity that we keep coming back to that 300 meter figure. The
Right.
at capacity
But-
lakes.
In here, it also says that areas in which the prohibitions on development activities apply can have been changed to within 30 meters of all wetlands. So that's why I'm not
But
certain.
Mike, I think, answered that earlier. Wetlands, you might say, is different to a freshwater, cold water.
Oh,
body,
no,
right?
I have it defined right here. Mike didn't answer it. Wetlands, it means everything from bogs to rivers to.
Yeah, which have their own sensitivities, right?
Yeah.
Habitats and so
Yeah, I
forth, but this is more
guarantee you the
concerned with the
setback would be
lake,
different
the
on a
water
dark
quality,
water
the lake
swamp,
health
right?
of the lake rather than the wetland,
Yeah.
even though they are all integrated.
So Jason, what you said, and Gina, you said they have something now, and Jason said you don't have anything now, right? That's because of the decision of the Conservation Authority, is that correct?
Correct. It's my statements coming from the correspondence we've received from the Conservation Authority, which is saying that they would not permit it. They would not permit, what was the former wording, not ADUs, but it was secondary dwelling.
Either.
Where
Yeah.
we were under the assumption, or some of our
Yeah,
information said that it was, even our bylaws. The
Mhm.
Conservation Authority is saying, yeah, it would have been stopped at their doorstep anyway.
right. And
Is
where
what
we
they're
were at,
telling us.
But
From
yet
previous
they approved
conversations.
that zoning bylaw. So to me, they should have also then, when they made a decision to do this, because there's meetings all the time with all the municipalities. You've had to have joint meetings for how long? And none of this
well,
came in until a couple of weeks, just before
but it
Christmas.
was at the request of the planning advisory committee that I went to them. So when we ran the table here, I think there was a bit of a divide, because I was saying maintain the secondary dwelling as suite, but not the additional. That was my position, right? Not to have detached ADUs. But then when we went back and asked the question, because we were pushing for more, we ended up getting less. Because they were forced into giving an answer.
We thought we
basically.
had an answer. We thought, all right, well, hey, listen, if additional dwelling units is, or
Detached.
a detached, yeah, like if
Yeah.
this was allowed, well, what difference does it make to us if there has an attached wall or not? We didn't care at that point. So then we go and we got an answer back that nobody liked.
Mhm.
I didn't like that answer back either.
Well, you're,
No, none of
but
us.
everybody's saying
None
that
of us.
it wouldn't have been permissible anyway.
That's just according to.
So you helped
the
us in the sense that we clarified that, because we might have maintained, mind you, the conservation authority, as to Nikki's point, as and when we go public, which hopefully we can get back to that and get this passed, they would still have made these or may still make these comments anyway, unless they have a change of opinion.
Well, then, should we just go back that, that for the purpose of this bylaw, that RLSs, will not be dealt with under this bylaw and remains under,
Well,
and let them say no?
I wouldn't say so, because there's no point doing a zoning bylaw amendment based upon the best information that you have to ignore some information that you've been given, right? We've tried to look at all of the different uses, all different provisions, and come up with some solutions, and we've really worked hard on that, but we can't just be selective about what we want to include.
Mhm.
It's just where we're at, unfortunately. It's applicable law.
Well, and I just wonder what East Ferris is doing, like. Nobody knows what East Ferris is doing on,
I take your point, and we definitely do need to consult and liaise with our partners in this area more. I'd like to do that, and that could be a winter project, certainly a
Right.
That's the
2-year.
nudge.
Yeah,
That's the nudge.
that's what we need.
100% expectation would be the Conservation Authority is treating everybody equitably. I don't know, it would actually be not of good faith for me to say that they wouldn't be doing that. I have to make the assumption that of course they're treating
Posting
everybody,
posts.
right, they're treating everybody equitably, so. I don't know exactly, I haven't looked into what East Ferris is doing, but I do know what the Conservation Authority is doing. And it's not unreasonable to make the expectation that they would hold other municipalities to the same account as us, so.
The other municipalities do have the restrictions. They even have tighter restrictions on waterfront development. So East Ferris and Chisholm, who share Nosbonsine, also have other rules in their zoning bylaws, which I can't speak to the sections off of my head.
Mhm.
But they have rules in there that you can't alter any of the waterfront. So you can't clear it, you can't clear cut, you still have to have the drainage. They have stricter policies to maintain the health of Lake Nosbonsine than what Bonfield does. So every municipality does their own rules.
Mhm.
So this is us taking the advice from the authority that we have, or advice directive, from the authorities that we have to listen to and putting in our, what we feel would be appropriate based on that. East Ferris is getting the same thing. They may go stricter.
yeah, well, no,
Right.
no one knows, yeah.
I don't know if they have started ADU consultations yet.
So we were really close when we were sticking with 3.
Well, we got,
5, and then it was, right, and then
got
because,
stumped.
because when we were just with Nikki's language, which I didn't write down, regretfully, but.
Changing any property deemed unsuitable by the North Bay Meadow Conservation Authority, which
Which-
leaves it open.
Yeah,
Leaves it open. To Gina's point, you pop up one, and if anybody comes in just reading this green is gonna say it's only allowed in these 3.
Mhm.
Which
Yes.
RLSs aren't in.
Well, why don't we say, and any other permit, property,
Residential property, but.
and
that's
any other
commercial,
resident,
right?
That's commercial and industrial as well, and multi-res, which we don't want them in those properties.
no, but if we're not saying, commercial,
No, but commercial does allow residential
right,
uses.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the
Do
same.
we have any here, both?
Yes.
What if we put other residential zones,
Previously
Pending-
covered?
no, other residential zones that we consider on a case by case basis?
In which section?
4.
Just 4.
4 allows for 2 more,
Mhm.
so it would have to be a statement on someone that would allow 1 more.
Mhm.
What if
Could
we
you live with that?
Could we
One
add
more?
3.4.5
Yeah.
something and add that RLS will be considered on a case by case basis?
I like what you'd got there. I like exactly what Nikki had said to replace point 1, because it still opens that door for consultation with.
Yeah.
And we've not mentioned any zones at that point. It's really just about the context. So
But we do
That's less
mention
restrictive.
zones at
Yeah,
3.454, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
0.4 is saying 2 units and 0.5 is saying restrictions on any units, but if.
We
Like
did a-
Nikki said too, if she says that any property deemed unsuitable. So then you can say, well, my property is deemed suitable, so I can do 1 at least.
right,
Right,
But-
It would be a case by case.
Yeah.
Cause then that allows, it leaves us open, the wording that is there, that I recommended, it leaves us open to have a case by case review on any property.
Yeah, so rather than include RLS, you could put on a case by case basis, and that's Nikki's word.
Under-
But it means the
under-
same.
4.4,
So
Any
if
property
it's
deemed
approved by the
unsuitable, yeah.
Conservation Authority, then it's going to be approved by. the
This would leave it open
Yep.
for any.
well, any
It's not
property
concerns.
deemed unsuitable.
Right.
But wouldn't we here do a 4A and a B and state a maximum of 1 unit? That is deemed suitable by North Bay Mountain on a case by case basis.
Well, I think that it leaves us open in this one first, because this is saying a maximum of 2, so it could be 1, right? So this allows us to do a review of that property. Any property that is not in 1, 2, or 3 would leave it open that we just do a case by case assessment on that property. And then look at that to say, okay, so I think North Bay Mountain Conservation comes in, they say based on land size, based on everything else, the outflows, that 1 might be possible, or you could have a septic system this big on that property, right?
Yeah.
So then that would dictate whether it's 1 or 2 ADU that they can have.
So your amendment is still in 3.455.
Yes,
Can you read your wording?
any property deemed unsuitable by the North Bay Mountain Conservation Authority,
You shall not be permitted.
anywhere where they're saying it's unsuitable.
And sorry, what's the language that?
Don't you mean deemed suitable?
That, because I'm
Oh.
saying any property, so
Yeah.
ADU shall not be permitted within any property deemed unsuitable by the North Bay Mountain Conservation Authority. So if somebody comes in and they say, my property is not zoned as 3.4.5.4.
Yep.
In one of those 3, right?
Yep.
So can I have one? And we would say, well, the first step would be that you need to get a review by the North Bay Mountain Conservation Authority.
Yeah.
We'll do, our planning administrator will do a review on lot size, making sure setbacks and everything else in there. See if there's any major red flags that they have to overcome. The first red flag is the North Bay Mountain Conservation. So then the Conservation Authority is going to look at the property, do that assessment and say, this is the maximum size you can have on a septic on that property. So that will tell us whether they can have 1 ADU, 2 ADUs, or 0 ADUs. But it won't matter what the zone is, it's somebody coming in to do that review.
Could we say in here for and any other property that is deemed suitable? Because we're saying unsuitable here and here,
And then we would need to have provisions and outlines of what's suitable, which is what all the rest of the bylaw says.
which
That they
doesn't,
they have to have the right setbacks, they have to have the lot size, they have to have the parking requirements, all of that is what the criteria is for suitable. So the only
So we can't
unsuitable
win.
question is the North Bay Mountain Conservation.
because anywhere. RLS in through the whole rest of the document would be deemed unsuitable. So we can't win.
No, well, we know that there's 9 lots that would be suitable.
I know, but we were talking about the odd other person that it might. Maybe their house is set up or circumstances. That someone's requesting one. We've allowed no
No,
case by case.
so that's what a site-specific zoning bylaw does. So then we look at the site-specific of that particular property, how it compares to all the other criteria in the bylaw. And if everything works out, then you do an amendment bylaw to allow it on that particular property.
Mhm.
But
That's
if
what we do if somebody comes in right now and they want to do a use in the rule, if they want to do a use that's not permitted in the rule, they have to do site-specific zoning bylaw so that it's a case by case. So it's the same principle that we would be using.
I just don't see. Like, is it in the current bylaw that we will agree to? Is there wording in the current bylaw?
That you can do an amendment, yeah. Like that's planning act, that you can do an
Yeah.
amendment to any zoning
Yeah.
bylaw.
There's an application form for it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have the application, we have a whole process set up for that.
So we would say site specific based on the decision of the Conservation Authority?
Yeah, that's
Yep.
ultimately what it comes down to, yes. So it would be permissible in any other property as long as it met all the other criteria.
So we're saying what not be permitted, but I was trying to get some
Yeah, you're
wording
trying to get the
that,
positive.
a positive in
Yeah.
there. And I'm not feeling any positive vibes.
The rest of the bylaw-
I think it's just the way that bylaws are worded, right? So we try to word them so that here's where we don't, we don't have a concern and these are fine. And then here are things where this is where we need to have the red flags. So, and that's how we word bylaws.
Yep.
And that allows us to leave it open, because it's not like we're explicitly saying no, we're just saying, here's a red flag, we need to look at your property in site specific.
To draw a line under that, do we want to do a quick vote on that wording as Nikki's proposed, just to end that piece? And then I know, because Eric had other comments maybe about the bylaw, because time's getting on and we want to try and get this passed tonight because of a time frame that we want to get this out the open house and start to talk about that as well, consultation and what we're going to do next.
We want it open for a bit for this building season. Understanding that the RLS is our hiccup, but we still want it.
Do people want to do a quick poll on that if they're happy with Nikki's proposed wording? How would you be happy?
And what was that?
Oh, would you be happy with this
Well,
addition to point one?
I'm good for
Jason's showing.
From a PAC perspective, I'm not.
Yeah.
Well, we
I'm
knew
sorry.
the challenge is. People are gonna read this and it's not permitted in the RLS, or it is permitted in the RLS, sorry, if they,
It's not permitted.
It's not.
I,
It's not explicitly permitted in the RLS.
right. So, okay, read your. Can you please read?
Yeah. The
Can
ADUs.
you start with 3.454?
Okay, so a maximum of 2 ADUs shall only be permitted in the following zones: residential density, residential 1 density zone, residential 2 density zone, the rural zone. And then ADUs shall not be permitted within any property deemed unsuitable by the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. Within any zone which does not permit a permanent dwelling unit within mobile homes, recreational vehicles, hunt camps, guest cabins, shipping containers, or any other accessory structure that is not designated and permitted for human occupation, or other zones considered incompatible with the proposed residential use.
Can we take out the word only in 3.454? So a maximum of 2 ADUs shall be permitted in the following zones?
Yes.
So now it's saying it is permitted there. It's not saying that it's not permitted anywhere else. It is saying that it is permitted there.
That's
Because
Not
now we
just
took out the
us.
word only. Yeah, well, but it's also leaving them open for commercial if they really wanna push the envelope and come in and have a conversation and go to like get site specific zoning. I mean, we would treat it all.
See, and I was trying to add a 4. And any case by case that is approved by the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Area.
Yeah, it's even bigger than the conservation authority. They'd have to meet like
Oh,
every
yes,
other criteria, yeah,
yes,
for
yeah.
sure.
But are you still under the heading of 2 extra ADUs?
Yeah, exactly.
Maximum of,
Well, we could add 3, 4, and 5, A and a B and state 1.
Yeah, it would have to
Yeah.
state 1
Yeah, and
for
state
that
1.
extra inclusion, yeah.
And an additional 1.
I mean, the reality is
It's
we could say
complicated.
9 and it won't really matter because when it gets to the conservation authority, they're gonna put a number on it, which
Yeah.
might be 0, right? Like it,
They might, but they might approve that because maybe that's their out too.
for sure, that, yeah.
They
That was
might approve that wording. If not, they're only gonna take it out, so what do we have to lose?
When is no, no. You know, I'm Jason came up with a good compromise there. Nikki had some good wording on that. I'm content with that. I don't know, it's up to the chair. Others to say,
know,
are you
that-
happy to advance
sure,
that as
yeah.
is? We can't just keep.
No, but we are, it's a whole big area. That's a lot of area. The RLS is a big, big area.
Yeah, at capacity.
Eric, what do you think?
I
Eric,
think that's good, like, anything can be reviewed.
So if we take out the word.
Maximum
only,
of two is all right, because you know, maybe it's only one type thing, yeah. It's possible to be one.
So I think that's the balance. If we take out the word only, it allows a bit more interpretation that other zones could be permitted, because it's not only those 3 zones. And then if we,
And for my legal, that only means not a lot to me. Does it mean a lot to you?
it shall only be permitted in the following zones, which would mean it's excluded from every other zone.
Well, I still take it when I see the word shall be permitted in the following zones, that means where it shall be permitted.
Yeah, and it is permitted there. It's not necessarily permitted in the other zones. It will be case by case for sure. Including commercial, including RLSs.
The combined
More.
area of that and the rural zone is much larger than the RLS zone. So the majority of the township will be able to have 2 ADUs.
Right. So I think the word only is very restrictive in that sentence. So I think we need to take that out if we're open to the idea of people making separate applications. And add in the word about the approval of the.
I was just wanted to add, a maximum of 1 ADU shall be, shall be permitted if on a case-by-case basis, that has been approved by the North Bay Mat and meets, well, it has to meet all other requirements
Yeah.
anyway.
So,
I think the only thing that kind of red flags that for me is that it's not typical bylaw wording.
Mhm.
All the other criteria are set out within this bylaw for ADUs. So you're saying specifically that it's only if North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority approves it. So in my wording, it's just saying that any land that they don't approve. And in your wording, it would be adding the regular language, but to say that if the North Bay Mattawa Conservation approves it. Do you know what I'm saying? I think we're saying the same thing. You're just trying to put it into a permissible way as I'm trying to make it into a site specific way. So, but in the zoning bylaw specifically, under section 1.212 of our comprehensive zoning bylaw, there's provisions for requests for amendments. So a request for an amendment to this bylaw, which this will be part of the bylaw, shall be accompanied by a completed copy of the appropriate application form and all required supporting studies and documentation as requested by the township or council. So that wording gives us that site specific piece. So we're not, it's like, it's a living document. It can
Yes.
always change.
Yeah.
And if North Bay Mattawa Conservation's rules change, then our bylaw changes. But all of this gets incorporated into the comprehensive zoning bylaw, the current, and in the big review that we have coming up.
Or
Which will take into effect all of the other changes that the province has made to the Drainage Act, to the Conservation Act, to all of those acts. All of that gets under the new zoning bylaw. Because there's a lot of things that we have not reviewed in the zoning bylaw. We're just trying to get the big trends that we're seeing in when we have consultations with the public. These are the trends they're trying to do. So we're just trying to address just that piece.
yeah, and we just happen to take in a lot into the,
Yeah.
to deal with but the recreational limited services RLS zone. Deems unless deemed suitable by the North Bay Conservation Authority.
What if we elaborate on that 3.45.5 and say something along the lines of note that all lots within all zones are subject to approval by North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. As such, ADUs shall not be permitted within, and then you state the rest of those points. So with the addition of all lots within all zones are subject to approval by North Bay Mountain Conservation Authority.
So you're
Just
just,
provides further clarification around the process, you mean?
so just change 3.45.5,
Yeah, just add
like
a
an
precursor-
introduction.
add a
sentence.
yeah, like a precursor or you know, little note there saying that. Note that all lots within all zones are subject to the approval by North Bay Mountain Conservation Authority. As such, ADUs shall not be permitted within. And then you state whatever you want to state there. So basically, if I'm reading that as, you know, as a designer or as a homeowner, and I'm gonna say. All lots in all zones are subject to North Bay, so then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should talk to those guys.
Mhm.
Cause, I don't know, kind of, does that satisfy? You know, you know,
Oh, and then
Well-
we're still saying one, any property deemed unsuitable by the North Bay Mattawa? Or is one
so,
staying the
so what it
same?
does, it opens up. In advance of that point, it says that, like, it doesn't matter what zone you are, if it's even the ones listed above here. Right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what zone, that you still, it's like a general note that. All lots in all zones are subject to approval by Conservation Authority, and as such, ADUs. Shall not be permitted within, and then it's kind of a repeat on the first one saying, hey, we're not allowed to have ADUs on any property deemed unsuitable by Conservation Authority. And then zone, you know, everything else listed there. But at least that kind of opening statement. Lets the reader say, oh, okay, like all lots in all zones. Are subject to, so I'm like, oh, I'm not listed in that about the two, but maybe I can get one. Like it leaves it open to, I think, more people saying, well, maybe there's a chance, and maybe I'll
Yes,
call
I see.
municipality or I'll call the authority.
And then,
It's just a leading statement, just clarifies what's next. I
Not
don't,
only the conservation authority, MTO and other authorities also.
well, true, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this
We can
bit,
say by
Well,
all
for entry
authorities.
permits.
All authorities and just.
Yeah.
and then one, I had just said the reverse it, the recreational limited services, RLS zone.
The MTO
If
wouldn't
if
involve-
deemed suitable by the
Entrance.
North Bay
You have
Mattawa.
to use the same- you have to use the same-
Yeah.
I was still leading with the recreational limited shall not be permitted within. The recreational limited service RLS zone. Unless deemed suitable by the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, just making it a positive rather than saying deemed unsuitable,
Well,
unless deemed suitable.
So it's not permitted unless deemed suitable.
Yeah,
How do we make that into bylaw language?
is that not the same thing? It's just reversing it?
If you want to say a specific zone in 3.45.5, it should technically be in 3.45. It should be in 0.4. We should not say a specific zone in number 5. Because then we have, what about all the other zones?
Well, we were.
That's my point. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm going. I'm like, I don't know why we wouldn't list it in. If what we know is we're okay with taking the conservation authority's lead on whether it's permitted or not. 1, 0, 1, 2. They're gonna say no to it if that's their prerogative. So what difference does it make if we put it in 3, 4, 5, 4?
well,
I think it's misleading.
How about my turn?
Yeah.
3.45.45. A maximum of one ADU may be permitted in SZ and RLS zones, subject to the approval of NBMCA.
Me.
I wouldn't at this stage, just based upon the advice we've been given, but it says may, so there's a get out there, but And when I say get out, I mean like some anti-development is just like we have to protect the interests, right, of the township.
I think we're leaving it at your exposure.
Thanks.
I like Pam's wording. That there's that caveat that everybody has to go and talk to North Bay Mineral Conservation Authority. I think if we put RLS in number 4, we're saying that, yeah, we give you approval. And then when they go out, people are just gonna get mad at the Conservation Authority because conservation is gonna be like, we told them no, but they still did it yes, so it's not our fault, they'll be mad at us.
He can't be mad at you.
Oh, just they line up.
Oh.
Hey, they line up to get none of us stuff. Are you kidding me?
They're doing their job.
Everyone's gonna be very happy when we pass this bylaw.
Ooh.
But not everyone.
Yeah, hey, listen, you don't.
I've never seen where we passed a policy where everyone is happy.
Don't get into politics and thinking everybody's gonna like everything you do. That's for
I
sure.
know.
I wouldn't, if I also didn't know the meaning of affordable housing, I guess I wouldn't be so.
Well, I think we all understand.
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
The intent, we all understand the
yeah.
intent and what affordable housing means. That's
Yeah.
why we're all sitting here debating this so hard,
Mhm.
is because we want people
Where's
to
North
afford.
Bay
pro-
Mattawa? I'm sure we could make him change his mind.
Right?
But I think that's my nudge, right?
Yeah, that's
Because we need to get out there to have that piece.
We are trying to bend ourselves into a pretzel to try and figure out how to work around the wording that he has already put into on paper. And say it's not permitted here. So I think I like Cam's wording.
Yep.
To be like, it's everything subject to. And then we'll nudge, your worship, I look at you, because I mean, this would be a council directive that we nudge to say, let's work with other municipalities to make sure that the Conservation Authority is consistent, that we have it updated,
Yeah.
documentation, and we have all that. I think that's something that council,
Which we want to do and should do anyway,
Yeah.
good practice in
Right.
planning, so yeah, I'd
Absolutely.
be happy to engage them.
Yeah.
I'm afraid once this, get it.
Yeah, but we've done, I feel good that we've done our part.
Mhm.
I'm not convinced of the job that Conservation Authority is doing and I have more questions, but that's for a different day.
yeah, unfortunately, it's not this table that we're able to answer those
Well,
questions.
well, we still have a chance to amend. Like maybe
Oh, yeah.
by
Yeah.
use plugging and say, geez, we had a meeting and, this is a concern is. Use
There
the
is-
ma.
We have done, yeah.
There's a million chances to amend, well, not a million, but I mean, we have public consultation coming up, we've got council's gonna review this. Ad nauseum as well, I'm sure, there's lots of debate and conversation to come. So,
And we will have the Conservation Authority on our draft. Or when we bring this draft to the public.
We'll certainly, we
certainly
will be
try.
inviting them, absolutely. We invited them tonight, so, yeah.
So they better be prepared with their answers
Yes.
and.
we might have to give them a drive here.
Yeah.
We're coming to get you.
Yes, you have to be
Yeah,
there.
guys in the room, not us this time.
With an escort.
Yeah.
And.
Like, they're not trying to be mean, they're not trying, like, they're doing their job too and creating these policies and having the evidence and the science behind their decisions. They're doing their job to protect the lake. And I understand that piece, that this is what they do, but we need newer evidence. We need, I mean, the world is changing. There's new technologies and subjects. There's things that are, ADUs are new. We never talked about having detached ADUs in a
Yeah.
rural community before. Now the province has opened up all of these new potential and possibilities
Yeah.
that we need to sit down with the authorities, the people who are making these decisions and saying, so here's what you've said, and here's how it's negatively, how we're, the barriers that we face in implementing this. It's not this table, I agree, that is going
Yeah.
to make the changes, but we have to start to lobby. Municipalities have to start to lobby that change.
Yeah,
Do you know if the city of North Bay allows secondary dwellings in their homes on lakes?
On lakes, I just read that statement about not within 300 meters. I'd have
Yeah.
to go back and read the
Was
particulars.
that a separate dwelling or even like
I
an
forget if it said
apartment?
secondary dwellings or ADUs. I forget
Okay.
the wording. I'd have to go
Okay.
back and revisit it. That's lots of stuff. Okay.
So I think, yeah, so there's lots of potential that this could still,
All
it's
right.
still gonna change.
I think we're there. Do you?
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, you know, it's funny that they use that 300 meter number where basically they're on municipal water, so what is going on here?
Yeah, they're on sewer.
They're on municipal
and
water,
sewer,
what
yeah.
is going on here, right?
But it's still about the fall that goes into the lake, right? Like when you have the, so they still look at, they look at a lot of
There's some
different.
with septics on the north side.
Yeah,
Okay, we're not gonna solve the conservation authority.
And we're not gonna sell the North Bay
Yeah,
Island.
yeah.
Okay.
So do we need to quickly,
Yeah, perhaps one more time, Cam, unless Nikki, do you want Cam to read it one more time? His
Yeah,
wording?
can you read it?
Yeah,
'Cause I
and then we'll
did
have it on
exactly.
camera too.
something that was along the lines of note that all lots within all zones are subject to the approval. You can rewrite things later
Yeah.
on, are subject to the approval by North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority.
Mhm.
As such, ADUs shall not be permitted within.
Okay, yep. And then my amendment in the one is any property deemed unsuitable by the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority.
Yep.
And then all the rest stay, and we take it
And
only
only, yeah, take it off.
from the other.
Yeah,
Don't forget to exclude commercial and industrial in that sentence.
Well, there's still, it's in here.
Yeah.
In the other sections. So with any zones which do not permit a permanent dwelling unit within mobile home, blah, 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 blah,
Incompatible.
other zones incompatible with.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna call the vote, but before I do, I'm just gonna do one roundtable. Are you comfortable?
I just want to quickly look
Hang on a
through the
second.
rest.
Yeah, I'll
Was
come to
there
you
anything
last.
else?
Oh, yeah, Eric, you've got others, but are you, like, before we move on to anything else, are you comfortable with where we went with the ADUs? Okay. Eric, are you comfortable with where we went with the
Excellent, thank you.
ADUs? Cam? You want me to slow roll my question?
I'm not 100%.
I don't know that we'll
Yeah,
ever get to 100%.
Yeah,
because
I
there's a
guess,
big
I wish
gray-
unfortunately that earlier we didn't have them here as part of the consultation.
So, unfortunately, yeah, I mean,
Because there's still a lot of differences, but the other thing is if someone comes, we also mentioned that maybe the fee would be,
yeah, council can make that decision. I'm
Yeah,
sure
That's a
we've
Yeah,
council
yeah,
decision. not-
more than fair
Yeah.
on trying to deal and make sure that we're,
Mhm.
okay, so
Yeah,
you're
ju-
okay?
just-
then?
well, I have to be.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So Eric, on to yours. You had something to,
Yeah. Conversations and. Report to council, page 4. It's just come to. 14. Just was wondering what it means, like the 15% for.
Right.
It's not restrictive at all.
No,
The 50%, no.
we did some calculations. I think that it would exceed the average size of a home,
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
it, what we're allowing for?
That's lot coverage, eh? Is that lot coverage?
Yeah,
I was thinking like somebody owns 100 acre lot.
they're building a warehouse.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So 15, that's. Because there were other
It's not a
percentages,
factor.
no, I didn't think so, there were other percentages like.
yeah, there's other barriers to,
Yeah.
you know, the cost of
So I was wondering
construction,
why it's
whether
there.
you've got a septic system that can accommodate the level of development that you want to do, you
I
know?
was just wondering why it's there to start. Because there are other numbers or other places like for lot coverages, ADU somewhere.
I believe those figures were taken from a number of other rural municipalities down south. They were the
Right.
best practices that have been put through in recent
Yeah.
amendments.
So that won't cause any problems or anything.
So that was
No,
the 5
I
and
guarantee you.
15%.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
boosted that to 15% because we preempted that. that
Yeah,
might
I'm
be
sure as we go through a public consultation on this, if somebody brings forward an example of why this would be restricted, we'll have that
Yeah.
conversation, but I can't imagine a world where that would be the case.
Mhm.
And in there, can there be something about, the numerous discussions regarding our RLSs? Was it?
I think it's,
Oh, it was pretty heavy on that, but
I think what Gina's saying, she'd like to add, for you to take the time and add the entire discussion that was.
No,
that's it. Yeah.
This, yeah.
Yeah,
Where are you hoping to add that? Sorry, in,
well, no, I
We
just
can add
didn't
in
know if
under
it was in
today's.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
we-
we can certainly
okay,
update about today's
okay.
conversation. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
oh, yes, for the document that I've asked to go onto the website? For the process? Is that what we're
Just
talking
the
about?
Yeah,
official
yeah.
planning report that you'll get
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
council
Yeah,
next
we'll be
week. So
incorporating here.
it'll
Well,
include
yeah.
today's.
yeah, today's conversation.
Any other comments or questions on any other part of it before I will read the motion. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by member Poisey. Seconded by member Paquette. That the planning advisory committee recommends the proposed bylaw amendment to comprehensive zoning bylaw 2012-49 prepared by staff in consultation with the planning advisory committee be forwarded to council for further review and consideration at its next scheduled meeting. All in favor? It's carried. I will just say, as chair and on behalf of the mayor and council who has asked the planning advisory committee to do this work, thank you. This has been an incredible amount of work and everyone's dedication to this, everyone taking it as seriously as they have and digging in as much as they have is greatly appreciated. So on behalf of the committee and council, thank you very much, and extend that thank you to our staff who have done. I would say probably what, 45 minutes work on yeah.
I can get back to my other workload.
Yeah, exactly.
You were kept busy.
There's been weeks of work on this and on behalf of the committee, thank you for all of your work on that. We appreciate it for sure.
And to Mike and the kiosks too, yeah.
So how long is this zoning bylaw?
Yeah, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
So.
Staff appreciate all of the feedback as well. It's important that we're bringing a really good document to council because we've had the discussions at this table. We appreciate that.
I am very excited. The mayor can also speak to this and perhaps everybody else hears it as you're talking. Like, we hear lots of comments about people wanting things like shipping containers or hunt camps or like wanting, oh my God, my parents need a place to, I just want to be able to build a place. So that's the heavy lifting. We are responding to an awful lot of things that our constituents have been asking for. So I think this has been a great piece of work for sure.
Which were already there, but needed
Yeah, absolutely.
legislation.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
well, it was something that came in at the end, so we were.
yeah. Well, I'm happy that we're able to move this forward. So is there any other business? Any correspondence? Oh,
I think it was the township hall or something on the agenda.
Yeah, I just put that on there.
The town hall.
Really, it was
yeah.
just reflected in the report that we're now proceed. We'll get some dates, but it will be on or around the 28th of February. We'll obviously, as well as make these amendments and put this to council for that discussion next week. Once, if subject to any changes that they make, we'll develop more palatable public-facing language that will go on the website and we'll advertise the open house. So for anyone at home, you'll be aware of the open house taking place, and there'll be an agenda for that. So we'll create that.
And will the planning committee be doing anything to do with the town
Yeah,
hall meeting?
I think you're supposed to actually present.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, just let me know.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't prepared. You don't want me to.
Turns out it's all permitted in RLSs now, yeah.
No, I meant,
I thank
You
you.
want us there, basically, right?
I would,
Oh, yes,
yes,
please.
very much, yeah.
Yeah.
like last time, all we did was put up signs in all the
Businesses.
Corbeil, all the businesses.
Excellent. Well, any support from the committee for putting those posters up, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
So on the town hall, we're gonna have a couple other bylaws, and then we're gonna start, a very quick outline of what the council strategic plan is too. So it's gonna be a heavy meeting, but there'll be other things other than just this bylaw.
What date is it?
I don't wanna commit to a date, because if council says that they're okay with the wording, let's go out to consultation, I can have it sooner, I have to give 21 days notice. So
From where?
from when council says yes, move forward. So if I have to give 21 days notice, I wanna wait, so I don't wanna commit to a date, but I am very hopeful that it's going to be in February.
Could be as early as, when's our next council meeting?
January 14th,
January 14th, and if that council gives a go ahead, it's 21 days after that.
right,
Do it on Valentine's Day.
Oh,
Oh.
for the town hall, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh,
You know, we're spending Valentine's Day together.
yeah.
oh.
Yeah, all right.
I want good food.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you. There's no unfinished business, so we'll move to adjournment. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by. Member Orblinski. I said that wrong again. I spelled it wrong, don't
Well,
worry.
let's see that.
And seconded by.
Hopefully that didn't-
Yeah, that this meeting be adjourned at 8:15 p.m. All in favor? That was carried.
Now you can
Thanks
have
again,
home.
everybody.
Excellent. Good
Thank you,
night.
guys.
I did oppose once.
Oh, boy, that's-